Okay, so I think we are ready to begin. So we start with
Please pin your image.
excuse me?
You need to pin your image.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. There's so many things to do getting this ready. Okay, do pin. Then do I have to do spotlight also?
Just spotlight.
Yes, spotlight is better.
Just spotlight.
Okay, it's spotlighted, but I think I have to pin also. Yeah. Okay, so we will begin with the verse of homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And we have progressed almost getting close to the end of July now. Today is July 25th. So time is rolling on. And we are working our way through the Anguttara Nikaya, and we are in the Book of Fours. And now we are up to sutta number 53. This is a sutta about the ideal kind of marriage. And I just want to get one book. Yeah, so this is an interesting subject. The scene is interesting, the way the sutta originates. So one time the Buddha is traveling along what is called the highway. We have to remember that in ancient India, there were no automobiles and buses and trucks. So what was called a highway would be, probably there would be only carriages traveling along and people walking along this roadway between Madura and Vairanga, someplace in central India. Okay, and then a number of male and female householders were also traveling along the same highway. And then at a certain point, the Buddha departed from the highway and he sat down at the foot of a tree. Okay, then the householders see the Buddha sitting there, and then they come up to him and they pay homage to him, and then they sit to one side. And now the Buddha, for some reason, is going to speak to them about the ideal kind of marriage, or about different kinds of marriage, culminating in the ideal type of marriage. Perhaps these were newly married people, and so the Buddha thought that it was appropriate to give them some instructions on how they should live together as husband and wife. And even since the time I became acquainted with early Buddhism, back maybe the late 1960s, that has always impressed me very much about the teaching is that even though the Buddha left the household life to lead an ascetic, renunciant, meditative life, and though he taught very profound principles like the teaching of anatta, non-self, dependent origination, the various stages of the celibate, the discipline appropriate for a celibate person, the advanced stages of meditative absorption, the higher stages of wisdom, but he always kept a kind of, let's say, a understanding of people living the household life, a kind of deep sympathy or empathy with people living the household life. And so he would be able to teach them in ways that were appropriate to their own situation. So when he encounters, in this case, with probably young husbands and wives, he doesn't teach them, oh, householders, the household life is a den of suffering, a pit of misery. Renounce the household life, come into the monastic order. I will ordain you as monks. I'll send the women get ordained as nuns, and then you can follow the path to liberation. No, he doesn't teach in that way. But when he comes across householders who are content living the lay life, he'll teach them in a way that will be ethically upright and guide them in ways that will at least conduce to a happy married life and lay the conditions for a happy rebirth in the future. So that is the way he teaches in this situation. We have to remember also that these male and female householders who come to the Buddha are not necessarily Buddhists, but probably even likely that they were not Buddhists. So why do they come and they pay homage to the Buddha? Well, in ancient India, and even in India today, it's common for lay people, whatever their religious affiliation might be, whether they're following Buddhism, Jainism, Brahmanism, or any other kind of sect current of that period, that naturally they have respect for renunciants. And they show that respect by paying homage to the distinguished monastic and asking for some advice, some instruction that's appropriate for their own situation. And often they will ask for a blessing from the monastic, from the renunciant. Just to give an example from my own experience, this would have been January 2019. I was in India, January and February, and it was actually in February that I did a walk across part of the state of Karnataka, the district called the Korg district of Karnataka, going to Talakaveri, that's the origin of the Kaveri River. And as we were walking, I was walking together with a layperson, Karnataka layperson, who is helping as my translator. And often, wherever we would stop, people would come up to me and say, please, Venerable, give me a blessing. And then I would recite some verses of blessing. And even one time, I remember walking along the road. There was a group of about 8 women on the other side of the road, and they called me across, come, come, come. And then through the translator, they said, please give us a blessing. And so I gave an individual blessing to each one of them. And it doesn't mean they weren't Buddhists, but they were, almost certainly they were Hindus, but they see that I'm wearing the saffron, the ochre robe, which is the symbol of renunciation in India, and that I have a shaved head. And so they identify me as a sannyasi, as a renunciant. And so they ask for a blessing. Okay, so in this case, the lay people come to the Buddha, and probably, though it's not stated, but they would have requested the Buddha, Bhante, we are householders, please give us some teachings appropriate for our own situation. And so now the Buddha is going to be teaching 4 ways of living together, 4 ways in which a man, and a woman can live together, presumably as husband and wife. And so we have here, the 4 ways are actually combinations of 2 possibilities. One is that either the husband or a wife is what is called in Pali, the Pali word that's used, is chava, which literally it means a corpse. Do you see the Pali text? Or I'll copy and paste.
No, we don't see it.
Yes, Bhante.
I see it.
I see it.
You do see it.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll create a word file and paste. Yeah, the word chava literally means a corpse. So I thought in translating into English, I thought it would sound a bit strange to be calling a partner in a marriage a corpse. And so I use the word wretch, a miserable type of person. Do you see it now?
No, not yet.
Yes.
Yes, Bhante, I see it.
Everybody else is seeing. I think one person is not seeing.
Yes.
The problem seems to be with their with their system.
Could be because he's on an iPad.
If it's an iPad, then probably they're not able to see it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. You could,
I see on iPad.
yeah. Okay, so the word wretch, some of the meanings is rogue, rascal. And then the other type, the key word there is deva. Deva is a god or a deity. Okay, so there are different possibilities. One is that both husband and wife are wretches. The second possibility is that the husband is a wretch, a rascal, a troublemaker, but the wife is a deity, a deva. The other is that the husband is a deva, like a divine being, but the wife is a troublemaker, a wretch, a miserable person. And the ideal possibility is that both husband and wife are devas. Okay, so what is the meaning of this? How is one a wretch, a miserable person, a rascal, a troublemaker? Okay, in that case, I'll just give the general explanation. One destroys life, steals, takes what is not given, engages in sexual misconduct, transgresses one's vow of fidelity, one speaks falsely, telling deliberate lies, and one uses liquor and intoxicants. And so in that way, one is transgressing against the five precepts. And so one is said to be dusila. Dusila means devoid of virtuous conduct. So we could say immoral. And then papa dhamma, which means of a bad character. So all of this is indicating failure or deficiency in regard to morality, lack of morality. So all of these we could say group together as one bad characteristic. Now the second bad characteristic is living at home, living the home life, but with a heart obsessed by the stain of miserliness. Yeah, the Pali expression is, the key word there is macharya. Machera. Machera, or sometimes Macharya. Yes, the meanings of this word is miserliness, stinginess, not avarice, accumulating and hoarding one's wealth and possessions, not being willing to give and to share with others. And particularly what would be indicated within the context of the Indian spirituality would be not being willing to support those who live the renunciant life. Since in the ancient Indian social system, the renunciants become, when they enter upon the homeless life, they give up any kind of remunerative income, any kind of occupation by which they're earning their own living, and becoming entirely dependent on the support from the lay community through the faith and devotion of the lay people, whether they're Buddhists, followers of Brahmanism, Jainism. They would all support monastics, no matter what religion they belonged to. It was considered part of the characteristic of a decent, upright person to support monastics of any commitment, any conviction, any confession. They would support them. And then the third characteristic, that's the second characteristic of the bad person, miserliness. And then the third is lacking any kind of respect, reverence, and empathy for renunciants, but instead one insults, reviles, abuses them, whether they be the samanas were the ascetics who have gone forth into homelessness. And here I think the Brahmins, what's meant by Brahmins, would not be the householder Brahmins who are performing the religious rituals, but rather the Brahmins who entered the renunciant life, but they would belong to distinct Brahmin orders of Brahmin renunciants. And so we could say that this is the third characteristic of the bad person, having hostility towards renunciants and lack of respect for renunciation and spiritual cultivation. So this would be the type of person today who would say, these monks and nuns are just parasites. They exploit the credulity, the superstition of lay people. Why don't they go out and get a job, support themselves? Why do they expect other people to support them? They're not doing anything useful. They just sit there in their rooms, contemplating their belly button, or reciting this mumbo jumbo, hocus pocus stuff, and expect lay people to support them. Okay, so those are the characteristics of the bad person. And then we just take the characteristics of the good person. And here it's framed in terms of the wife. So one abstains from the destruction of life and so on. In other words, one is observing the 5 precepts, and then one is silava. So it's in the case of a woman, silavati, of virtuous, of good behavior, and I think it's kalyana dhamma, of good character. Yeah, kalyana dhamma, which means having a good nature, a good character. Okay, so all of this belongs to the side of sila, or virtuous or moral behavior. Then the next, she dwells at home with a heart free from the stain of miserliness. This is a short way of expressing the virtue of generosity. But then it will go on to say, she dwells at home with a heart free from the stain of miserliness, one who delights in giving and sharing, who it is charitable, who delights in self-sacrifice, something like that. And then one who does not insult or revile ascetics and Brahmins. This is a negative way of putting it, but one could put it more positively. One who respects, reveres, honors, esteems, and venerates ascetics and Brahmins. So these would be the three characteristics of the good partner in the marriage: good moral behavior, generosity, particularly generosity in supporting renunciants, and then having respect and veneration for ascetics and Brahmins. And it's when one has respect and veneration for ascetics and Brahmins that one will then approach them and request teachings from them. And then when the ascetic or Brahmin will provide teachings that will show one how to live a virtuous life and how to cultivate the qualities that conduce to a happy rebirth. Okay, so we just have these four combinations, four permutations. And so the ideal way of living together is when the deva lives together with a deva. That's when both husband and wife have the good moral character, observing the precepts. They're both generous and they don't insult or revile ascetics and Brahmins. Okay, so in this sutta, I told you in the note that we're going to work through this material quickly. So this sutta discusses this ideal marriage as a discourse that the Buddha gives to a group of householders who come to him for advice. The next sutta is exactly the same, except this sutta, the Buddha speaks to the monks and on his own, and then he explains the same points to the monks. Oh, this is an interesting sutta, the next one, also concerned with marriage. So this time, the Buddha is living at a place called Sungsumara Gira. I think this means Sungsumara is a crocodile and Gira is a hill. So this is Crocodile Hill. Okay, and then in the morning, the Buddha dresses and he goes to the residence of a householder named Nakula Pita, and his wife is named Nakula Mata. Now the word Pita means father and Mata means mother. So this couple is called the father and mother of Nakula. We don't know who Nakula is. I don't think we ever meet him in the suttas, but the couple is named after their son. And who is this couple, Nakula Pita and Nakula Mata? According to the commentary, this was the couple who, as a married couple, had the closest personal relationship with the Buddha. When the Buddha came to them for the very first time, they welcomed the Buddha as if he was their long-lost son who had come to them just out of the blue. And the Buddha felt extremely comfortable in the presence of this couple. And according to the commentary, in 500 past lives, and 500 is just a kind of token number, meaning in many past lives, this couple had been the Buddha's parents during these past lives when the Buddha was following the Bodhisattva path. So because they had been associated in so many past lives as parents and child, when the Buddha first met them, this couple welcomed the Buddha and said, "It's so wonderful to see you back, to see that you've come back, our beloved son." And the Buddha felt towards this couple as they were his own parents. And so amongst the great disciples of the Buddha, in the list of the great disciples, the Buddha said that this couple were the foremost in the quality of visasa. Visasa means something like confidence or intimacy. And I think the sense is that this couple had a very intimate feeling towards the Buddha, and the Buddha had a very intimate feeling towards this couple. Like he had come back to his own beloved parents from many past lives. And this couple, as we will see, were very, of course, since they were the Buddha's parents in many past lives, it means that they were husband and wife in many past lives. And so they had a very, very deeply loving relationship to one another. And so in this occasion, they come to the Buddha, and then the husband, Nakulapita, says, "Since I was young, when the young girl Nakulamata was given to me in marriage," you see, in ancient India, as often today in India still, marriages are pre-arranged. And so the family of the boy will search around for a good family that they want to become associated with, a family that will have a daughter of marriageable age, and then there'll be some consultations. And if the families seem to have to resonate with one another, and the young man and the young girl seem to resonate with one another, then the families will arrange the marriage. And maybe against our present standards, it would seem that that's a recipe for disaster, but actually many of these prearranged marriages work out quite successfully, whereas love marriages sometimes don't work out so well, as we see in the contemporary American scene, where people marry through an initial burst of love, but as the marriage goes on, that love turns to excessive familiarity, then to indifference, then to anger and hatred, and then the marriage ends in divorce. So here Nakulapita explains, since I was young, when Nakulamata was given to me in marriage, I do not recall ever transgressing against her, that is, committing adultery, even in thought, much less by deed. Okay, and then he says, we wish, Bhante, to see one another not only in this present life, but also in future lives. Then the wife, Nakulamata, states the same thing to the Buddha, that I do not recall ever transgressing against him, even in thought, much less by deed. We wish to see one another not only in this present life, but also in future lives. So what they're asking in effect is, how can we be assured of coming together in the future, reuniting and becoming husband and wife in the future? Well, it's interesting. The Buddha doesn't say to them, oh, Nakula Pita, Nakula Mata, don't you see the danger in samsara, that life in every realm is full of misery and suffering? Don't think of coming together as husband and wife in the future, but even if you can't renounce in this life, you should make the strong determination, in my next life, I'm going to become a monk. In the next life, I'm going to become a nun. But that's not their wish. And so the Buddha, as long as the wish could be considered as wholesome, the Buddha will teach them in accordance with their wish. And so the Buddha says, if both husband and wife want to see another, not only in this life, but also in future lives, they have to have certain qualities of the same kind and at the same level. So what are these qualities that they need? 4 qualities are essential. They have to have the same suttas, the same faith, the same sila, observing the same precepts, following the same guidelines to righteous action, the same kind of generosity. They should be generous and practice generosity with the same motivation, and in this case, probably generosity in supporting the same kind of monastics and the same wisdom. So they also need wisdom. And later, in a later sutta, we're going to see what kind of wisdom that is. So when they have these same qualities in common, and probably in the case of Buddhists, we'll be having the same faith in the Buddha Dharma. In the case for the virtuous behavior, observing at minimum the 5 precepts, and maybe also observing the 8 precepts on the Uposatha days, the Poya days, the same generosity, that is making gifts together as husband and wife, coming together to make alms offerings to support the Sangha or to support worthy causes, charitable causes, and having the same wisdom. And later, another sutta will explain that this is the wisdom of understanding the arising and perishing of conditioned phenomena, the insight that leads to the extinction of suffering. So those are the 4 qualities that they need that they both should possess. And when they have those qualities, then they will come together, not only in this life, but also in future lives. So if you are in a happy marriage, and for the woman wants to come together with her husband, husband wants to come together with the wife, you should be sure to have these 4 qualities. And when they come together in the future life, when they have those 4 qualities, the verse says that having the practice, the Dhamma here, so this would be living in accordance with the Dhamma through virtue, generosity, and wisdom, the same in virtuous behavior and their sila, their conduct, delighting after death in a deva world, they rejoice, enjoying sensual pleasures. So when they have those 4 qualities will lead probably to rebirth in the deva world. So they come together as husband and wife in a lower deva world, not in the Brahma world. In the Brahma world, there's no sexual differentiation, and so no relationship of husband and wife. But in the lower Deva world, apparently, there's distinction of male and female and enjoying sensual pleasures. Okay, next sutta. Again, the content is the same, but here the Buddha is not speaking to a couple, but he's addressing the monks in general. Okay, next sutta.
Excuse me, Bhante. I think it's you're not recording. I haven't seen the red button. It was not recorded. Sorry. Thank you.
Bande, you
But
are.
it's recording because it says pause recording.
Yeah, Bande, you are recording. Don't worry.
Bhante,
Yeah.
you are recording. Don't worry. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we
recording.
See it too.
we see the button.
You see it.
Yes, Bhante.
I don't see it, but I had checked earlier. I checked earlier and I saw that it says pause recording, stop recording. So that means it is recording.
Yep, I saw it. Sorry. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so now we come to the next sutta. And when I finish this set, then we'll take some questions. So in this sutta, the Buddha is living among the Kolians. Now the Kolians, this was a state, a tribal republic next to the Sakyan state. And it was from the Kolian state that Mahamaya, the Buddha's mother, came. So the Buddha's father was a Sakyan, but his mother was a Kolian. So now the Buddha is dwelling amongst his probably maternal relatives. And he goes to the residence of a young woman from the Kolian clan. Her name is Supavasa. And then and this is at the mealtime, so he's taken his alms bowl. And Supavasa serves the Buddha with various kinds of delicious food. And then after the meal, now the Buddha is going to give her a little discourse. And this becomes like a standard discourse in Buddhist monastic culture, where after a meal, the monk will explain to the lay people who have offered the food, what are the benefits of making offerings to the Sangha. So here the Buddha says that a female lay disciple who gives food gives the recipients 4 things. She gives life, beauty, happiness, and strength. So all of those things are sort of inherent and ingredient in the food, because when you give food, food is what maintains the life force. So without food, a human being cannot live. So by giving, even though one meal, if you miss one meal, you're not going to die. But inherent in each meal is the capacity to preserve life and sustain life. So in giving food, you're giving life. Then when you give food, you give vana. Vana, one of the meanings is beauty. Good features, good facial features. Because if a person goes for a long time without eating, then the face becomes withered, the body becomes withered, and the facial features not very pleasant. But when you give food, then the person fills out so that they get nice full cheeks and a pleasant smile, and so they become beautiful. So you give beauty. Then one gives happiness or pleasure, because going for a long time without having food becomes very debilitating and unpleasant. a terrible source of suffering. Probably very few of us have ever experienced the suffering that comes from chronic hunger and malnutrition, but we know from news reports and so on that it's a very, very grave source of suffering. And so when you give food, especially well-prepared, delicious food, you're giving happiness. And then food is what restores the strength of the body. So without food, one becomes weak, listless, lackadaisical, without any physical energy. But through food, one recharges the body with strength. And so giving food, one gives strength. And so this gift of food, when one gives the food, one should form the intention, the volition, accompanied by the knowledge. So this becomes a citta accompanied by knowledge. In Abhidhamma terms, a jnana sampayutta citta, accompanied by the knowledge that when I'm giving food, I'm giving life, beauty, happiness, and strength. And one also has the knowledge, the understanding that this gift of food stems, it's not just a physical action, but it's the manifestation, the expression of a chaitana, of a volition. One gives the food with the intention of supporting the life of the recipient. One gives the food wishing to contribute to promote the beauty, the happiness, and strength of the recipient. And one gives the food aware of the law of karma that connects one's volition, the volition, the intention that motivates the act of giving, that connects, that there is a law that connects that wholesome, beautiful act of giving, the chaitasika of giving, the chaitasika of non-greed, of generosity, that connects that volitional act of giving with the consequence or result of that act. The act of giving, the volition, the chaitana, is connected to the result by the law of karma, the karma niyama. So the act of giving is a kusala karma, a wholesome karma that has the capacity, the potential to produce its fruit, its result. And so when that wholesome karma gains the opportunity, the right conditions, it will produce its result. And if that karma, that wholesome karma is strong enough, it will take on the role, it can take on the role of generating rebirth. And so if it takes on that role of generating rebirth, the karma of giving, being a wholesome karma, will produce rebirth in a fortunate state of existence, either in the human world under favorable or fortunate conditions, free from poverty, from rebirth in a country subject to war and violence, just so rebirth with a reasonable level of affluence, peace, and other supporting conditions to enable one to find happiness in one's human life. Or else, if it's powerful enough, it can lead to rebirth in the celestial realm, in one of the heavenly realms. And when one gains rebirth in these realms, because one gave food, aware that that food contributed to the long life of the recipients, the karma that produced rebirth will contribute to a long lifespan in the new existence. Okay, that same karma derived from the act of giving, from the volition of giving, contributed to the beauty or good features of the recipient, and so they will contribute to beauty in the new existence, whether as a deity or as a human being. It will contribute to happiness, and it will contribute to strength, to health, to vitality in the new existence, whether in heaven or as a human being. Then there are some suttas in the Book of Fives of the Anguttara Nikaya, which adds a fifth benefit of giving food. That benefit is that one gives something called pati bana. Maybe we could translate pati bana as intellectual acuity, sharpness of mind, so that one can understand things quickly and easily and can communicate one's understanding to others effectively and eloquently. Because if a person is deprived of food and they're weak and debilitated by hunger, when they have to study a subject, maybe literature or mathematics, or in the case of monastics, to study the Dharma, the mind just doesn't have the sharpness to be able to understand easily. And then if they're in a position where they're asked, teach what you've learned to others, if they're really afflicted with severe hunger and weakness due to hunger, they're not able to explain and to expound the Dhamma well. So when you give the gift of food, you're giving the recipient through the food the gift of sharpness of mind, intellectual acuity, and the karma generated by that gift of food comes back to you as a recipient by promoting your own intellectual acuity. And so when lay people give us food, one of the standard verses in the Pali, this is from the Dhammapada, a verse that's usually shared by the monks after the meal when the lay people make the offering of food. They say, Abhivadanasi lisa nitang vudapachayino chataro dhamma vadanti ayu vadu sukhang balang. So for those who show reverence to the elders, who are in the habit of showing respect to them, four things increase. Four things always increase: lifespan, beauty, happiness, and strength. Now, there's sometimes a misunderstanding about the nature of this practice of generosity. Sometimes the objection is raised, you give food to others because you're seeing it as a kind of exchange deal, a bargain. You give the food to others and you get long life, beauty, happiness, and strength. So really it's done with a selfish motivation. I think that's a misunderstanding. Well, let's say somebody might misunderstand the practice of generosity, and they might actually give food and other things with the ideal that this is a kind of exchange business arrangement. I give to them, I get the merit, I get the benefits through the ripening of that merit. But the correct attitude is to give without concern for the results, but aware that when you practice giving, it creates the karma that will bring those results. And so the motivation is not to get something in exchange. The motivation is because one sees that the practice of giving is something wholesome, beautiful, uplifting, and of true benefit to the recipients. But when one gives, one has this right view of karma and its results, the understanding that the practice of giving creates the wholesome karma that will generate results that correspond to the nature of the gift itself. Okay, then come the verses. We'll just read them, then I'll take questions. Okay, so when one gives well-prepared food, pure, delicious, and flavorful, to the upright ones who are exalted and of excellent conduct. So the Buddha is here speaking specifically about the gift of food to the renunciants who are living this righteous, virtuous life. But also what I want to stress is that it's important for lay people, for people not to think, I just give, make offerings and gifts to the Buddhist monks and nuns, and my practice of generosity ends there. In today's world, particularly, where there are so many people, I think the latest estimate is close to 900 million people suffering from food insecurity, 250 million people living on the verge of starvation. It's important to give, to help to alleviate the hunger of those afflicted with chronic hunger and malnutrition. Okay, but the Buddha is speaking here in the context of the mutual support of monastics and lay people, where lay people support the monastics. You could offer the robes like once every few years because a robe will last a few years. When you offer a dwelling place, even a simple cottage, might last for decades. Medicines you give in time of sickness, but the thing that you offer every day would be food. So those recollecting such generosity dwell in the world inspired by joy. So this is one of the benefits of the practice of generosity, that you recollect one's own generosity, not as a way of boosting one's ego, not a way of sort of swelling up with pride and thinking how generous I am, not in order to create a plaque that says, I gave this building to the Sangha, but because the practice of generosity fills the mind with joy. And then by practicing generosity, you remove the stain of miserliness, of stinginess. You remove it from the mind. Miserliness, together with its root, the root is greed. And then through that wholesome karma, one goes to a heavenly abode. So that's the sutta given to Supavasa. Then next comes a sutta given to Anathapindika, whose proper name was Sudatta. The content exactly the same. Sutta number 59. Here the Buddha is not speaking to a specific donor, but he's speaking to the monks in general verse is the same. And number 60, we could just go quickly. So this is the proper way for the layperson to support the monastics. And this is creating karma that leads to fame in this life and to heaven. One supports the Sangha with robes, alms food, dwelling place, and medicines. Okay, in this way, we covered all of these suttas, 53, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 7 suttas we covered today. Okay, now we can look at some questions. And if you don't know how to ask a question, you go to the bottom of the participant box and you'll see a little box that says hand, and you click that, and then your hand will come up. Okay, so let us take the questions. Babalo?
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Bodhi. My question, as a lay follower, I have a question.
Yeah.
In the Samyutta Nikaya, empty is the world. Empty is the world. In what way, Venerable Sir, is it said, empty is the world? It is Ananda because it is empty of self and what belongs to self. Empty is the world. My question is, if there is no self, what is rebirth? Like how do?
Yeah. First, the question should be relevant to the topics that we're bringing up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So the question should always be based on the suttas that we're discussing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, but let me just quickly. It's actually not true that there is no self. What the sutta says that the things of the world are empty of self. So it's empty of what we call a metaphysical self or a substantial self. But the person exists as an empirical reality. And so there's no lasting substantial self, but there is a continuity of experience, a flow or stream of consciousness that we could conventionally designate the self or the person. And that stream of consciousness at death moves on to the new existence. So that is what is reborn after death.
Wow, amazing. Thank you.
Okay. Gabriel?
Hello, Bhante. Thank you. If I remember, there's a sutta from the Buddha on the reasons for giving. And if I remember well, the last one, which he says is the right one, so to say, is to beautify the mind.
Some person is
yeah. But you should have asked me, right? Because mommy says it's okay.
I'm going to have to mute everybody. Okay, Gabriel, unmute yourself.
Okay. And the last one is to make the mind beautiful.
Yeah.
As a reason. And if I remember well, the Buddha says that's the right one or the most appropriate reason for giving.
Yeah.
And I found the expression very mysterious, but it seems that when you were explaining, you came close to an explanation of that. Am I right to understand that the way you were explaining the right way of giving, not trying to think of the results, but of how the practice will eventually lead to good results?
I think.
Is that related to the expression?
I think by that expression, to make the mind beautiful, to adorn the mind, the idea is not even that one is aware that the act of giving will lead to good results, but rather the idea is that the act of giving in itself is something which is beautiful, which sort of transforms one's character, and it helps to uproot miserliness or stinginess and to imbue the mind with this natural disposition towards generosity. And it's when the mind is sort of possessed of that quality, that disposition of generosity, that you could say it's beautified and adorned. That's the way I would understand it.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, Shokuchi?
Yeah, Shokuchi.
Shokuji.
Thank you, Venerable, for your teaching. I'm wondering about the world knowers. It's the last two words of the verse of the Supavasta section. I wonder who the world knowers are, what that means.
Yeah, that is actually, I think it's referring to the Buddha himself. Let me just see. Oh, by the world knowers. According to the commentary, if you could see the note, it says the world knowers are the Buddhas. Yeah, so this is I think it's Loka Vidu. It's one of the designations of the Buddha. Though it occurs in the plural, so it could refer not only to the Buddha, but to those of his Arahat disciples who also have certain superior knowledges, abhinyas. Yeah, so that's who it would be.
Thank you.
Okay, Samantha Jayatilaka.
Yes, morning, Bhante. Thank you. I just want to clarify about rebirth. I would have thought that by doing kusala actions, it would be best to be reborn in a Deva or Brahma world, where there's happiness, and in a Brahma world, say, total bliss. But some say that Buddha has said that it's best to be reborn in a human world where one can actually see suffering and hence progress towards enlightenment. So that's a bit confusion there. So when one is sort of like meditating and going into mental, higher mental states, and then there's people say that if you die in a certain mental state, then you'll be reborn in a Brahma world or something, and then you will never learn the Dhamma because there's no ears. So what exactly, is should one do then?
Okay, that's a good question. I think that there's some misunderstanding the way the statement comes, that it's always best to be reborn as a human being. I think that's a misunderstanding. So in the suttas, we see that the Buddha encourages those who are not yet ready for liberation to be reborn either as a human being under fortunate conditions or in a Deva world. Now, what is said where this misunderstanding arises, it's said that the Buddhas, those who attain Buddhahood, always attain Buddhahood in the human world, not in the Deva world or a Brahma world, because a Buddha attains Buddhahood by discovering the path for himself without any guidance. And so the Buddha, or let's say the Bodhisattva in his last existence, has to be born under conditions where he'll be exposed to a mixture of suffering and happiness, where the lifespan is not too long, not too short. So for that reason, the human realm is taken as the exclusive realm in which bodhisattvas in their last life attain Buddhahood. But a being reborn in the Deva world or Brahma world, if they've been exposed to the Buddha Dharma as a human being and have a good understanding of the Dharma, then they'll have the right view there. And so they can use that right view, presumably, to continue to practice the Dhamma and attain the various stages of enlightenment there.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, but what is discouraged is taking rebirth in the formless realm,
Right,
the Arupa Loka, unless one is already a stream enterer. Because in the formless realm, one doesn't have a physical body, and so one can't get the chance, the opportunity to hear the Dhamma.
Yes. So when one is meditating, do they go through all the different like jhanas up to the 8th jhana, and then they have to go beyond that. So if they get stuck, I mean, I presume in Buddha's times, when a lot of them became arahants because they were quite high up in their attainments, mental absorptions, and they were able to understand the Dhamma quite easily. So did they actually come up to the 8th jhana? And if you're fortunate enough to go beyond that, you were okay. But then if you get stuck at the 8th jhana, in the formless jhana, then would you be reborn? And does it work like that?
Yeah, this is something I really don't know the answer to. I've thought about this puzzle. Somebody attains the arupa jhanas, and they don't attain any path or fruit.
Yes.
And so it's considered unfortunate to be reborn in the formless realms.
Yes.
Can they voluntarily sort of renounce the possibility of being reborn in the formless realm and take rebirth maybe in the Brahma world?
Yes.
Where they'll have a physical body? It would seem to me that that should be the case.
Yeah, yes.
But I've never seen that discussed in the suttas themselves or even in the commentaries.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, Venerable, this is Pramahachanya. Venerable?
Hello, Bhante. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Now I hear you, yeah.
I'm interested in clearing Pali language and English. When you say Ayu Vanno Sukhang Palang, what's this good word for Ayu, age or long life? Can be good translate in English. In Pali language, Ayu.
Yeah, literally it's life. Literally, Ayu is life, but what is meant is a long lifespan.
If we use in the blessing, can we say, may long life, beauty, and happiness, and energy be with you? Can I say like that?
Yeah, you can say that, yeah.
About the strength, can we use energy instead of strength in sutta?
I would say, I would prefer strength.
Strength. What you prefer word? I would like to follow you in English.
Yeah, I would say strength. I would say strength.
Strength.
Yeah. Because usually I use energy for virya.
And what about vanna, beautiful, or reflection? Which is better?
Reflection? No, reflection doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Beauty is
a better.
Yeah.
Vanna, that's mean good skin or something like that.
Excuse me?
Pali language.
Vanna is.
Ayu vanna means sukha phala.
Yeah.
And the root of word is like a skin or something like that. Vanna in Pali language.
Complexion.
Reflection.
Complexion.
No, I wouldn't say reflection. Beauty.
Yeah.
Beauty is the best.
Beauty better. Okay.
Yeah.
I believe Bhante. I would like to clear about the word. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Lim Kim Hung or Sujata T.
Good morning, Bhante.
Good morning.
Yeah, regarding the offerings of food to the monks. So what about if, let's say, when we offer and there's only one monk and there are many lay devotees where they come with so many types of food and everything, and they prepare with a full, with their full heart to serve. But the thing is, the monk may not take their food because there are too many. So will the giver have the same result because they prepare the food with a pure mind, but the monk didn't take it because it's too much for him to take.
Yeah, usually what our practice is, the layperson who prepares the food offers it to the monk, and the monk will receive the dish in his hands. And so the act of giving is completed. Whether the monk actually puts the food into his bowl or not is another matter. But when he receives it, then the act of giving is completed. So it doesn't matter whether he actually eats it or not, but he receives the food.
I see. But it won't satisfy the four things that you mentioned.
No,
about,
it satisfies them. Because
it satisfies also.
Yeah, because the person is offered intending to give life, long life, beauty,
I see.
happiness and strength.
So it's satisfied. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay. Namal?
Thank you, Bhante, for taking my question. My question pertains to the aspiration that Nakula Pita and Nakula Mata made to be born together.
Yeah.
My question is, say, if you have, once you kind of turned on the spiritual path and you condense your friends and relatives to a few that you talk about the Dhamma, who obviously benefit you, and you share your experiences, and then you have a few friends, is it reasonable to make an aspiration that you continue that friendship because it benefits your spiritual progress in the next life with those few people? Or would that itself be an impediment to your spiritual progress in the next life to make such an aspiration, because it means that you have this clinging to this group of close people?
No, I disagree with that. I think it's good to have that aspiration to come together with, you call us, good spiritual friends in the future lives. In fact, that's one of the verses that we recite in Sri Lanka. Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bhanapatiya. By the power of this merit, may I never come together with foolish people. May I always come together with the good people until I attain nirvana. Yeah, so I think it's good to form the aspiration to come together with one's spiritual friends.
Thank you, Bhante.
And probably that will serve as a condition. Of course, there are many other complex conditions, but at least that will be one condition tending to bring one together in future lives.
I see.
That's my supposition.
Thank you so much, Bhante.
Okay, Vinyu.
Yep. Good morning, Bhante.
Good morning.
It's regarding the Nakula Pita and Nakula Mata again. You mentioned something like they will husband and wife 500 lives, and they have been supporting the Buddha when he was a Bodhisattva, and that was captured in the commentary. My question is this: as we know that during the first council or in the Satapani cave, the 500 arahants basically reciting the suttas, and I wonder whether are they also reciting the commentary, and that when does the commentary come into the picture? And how do we know how authentic is the commentary?
Oh, that's a big question. Certainly the commentaries that have come down to us are the product of several hundred years of evolution. My supposition, and this is just a guess, is that probably from a very early period, there would have been word commentaries on unusual words or maybe technical terms that are used in the suttas, and probably that formed the original nucleus of what became the Abhidhamma. It was a sort of like word commentary on words in the suttas. But over time, the commentaries gathered more and more material, and in the case of the Pali commentaries, they became shaped to fit the specific, like, Theravada doctrinal standpoint, in distinction from the standpoints of other philosophical schools. But this is a big question that I can't deal with in
Thank you.
In a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, Jia Tang. Jia Tang. Ji Tang. Okay, Matt.
Hello, Bhante. Thank you for your teaching.
Self-bound.
Okay,
Sorry,
maybe.
I'll step aside.
Okay, go ahead. Jia Tang.
Okay, so I heard your comments about the try to have a spiritual friends together, but if husband and wife is in a two different direction in terms of the certain type, right? One is stable, the other is a red, not so good. So how do you like try to influence the other side of the couple to be more like a spiritual? What's your comment on that? Like have same belief or
I guess one has to find ways that will be, the person in the relationship will know better than I do how to influence the other person.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just not possible, just the interest is not there.
Right.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you, Bhante. With regard to the offering of food and the practice of generosity, and how does that go with, I believe there's also some place in the suttas where there's talk about the higher the person's attainment that you're offering to, the more merit is gained by it, whether they're first path or second path or third path or so on.
Yeah.
And that always felt a little strange to me, that part. So I wonder how you square that with the explanation you gave earlier.
Yeah, well, this is said in certain places in the suttas that the merit that comes from the act of giving is a product of two things. It's the intention, the volitional force of the donor, the one who's giving, and the spiritual qualities of the recipient. And so when the recipient is a person at one of these four layers, levels of realization, the merit will be multiplied according to the particular status or standing of the recipient. Suppose the donor is giving with the same intention to each one, but the spiritual stature of the recipient influences the, quote, quantity of merit that's generated. Though I have to say, frankly, I always feel a bit uncomfortable about that, even though this is said in the suttas and probably there's some truth to it. But sometimes it leads to this attitude of people looking around, is this one a stream enterer? Oh, is this one a once returner? Oh, this one is supposed to be an arhat. I'll give to him. I won't give to the poor people. Yeah, but that is what is said. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. I was also very uncomfortable with that. And as the mind goes, it kind of wants to say, oh, then maybe that's a later addition. Maybe that was a later addition to the suttas. Is there any evidence for that?
No, in fact, it seems to me to be reasonable in itself. That, in fact, there is some sutta source for this. This is close to the time of the Buddha's parinibbana, when he receives the last meal from the smith Chunda. He says that there are two meal offerings to the Tathagata that are especially meritorious. One is the meal offering that he receives just before he attains the supreme enlightenment on that day, and then the last meal that he receives before his parinibbana. So that shows that there's a difference in the merit that depends. In this case, it's the same recipient, but it is determined by the situation. Anyway, I'm going to have to stop now. I see there are some other questions, but I have to go up for the meal. So I'm sorry I can't deal with every question now. Okay, but we'll have to end now with the sharing of the merits. So let me get the file. Okay, so we recite the verses to share the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahedika munyanta chiranga kantu sahasa akasata chabumata deva naga mahedika punyanta anumoditva chiranga kantu desanang akasata chabumata Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mang Parang Etavatacham Hehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Anumodantu Sabba Sampati Siddhya Etavatacham Hehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Bhuta Anumodantu Sabba Sampati Siddhya Etavatacham Hehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Sata Anumodantu Sabba Sampati Siddhya Bhavagopadaya Avici Hetato Etantare Satakayupapanna Rupya Rupicha Sanya Sanino Dukha Pamuchantu Pusantu Nibuting.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay. Then I want to close with some announcements that on Sunday evening, that's tomorrow evening, from 7 to 8 p.m., there's group meditation over Zoom, the same Zoom account. This will be guided by Venerable Mangala, Bhante Mangala. On Wednesday evening, 7 to 8 p.m., we have group meditation over Zoom, guided by myself. Then on Sunday evening and Thursday evening, my students Stephen Sass and Regina Valdez, they have a program called Sutta and the City. That is from 7 to 7:45 p.m. Sunday and Thursday evening. And you could find the link to it if you search on Google for Sutta and the City. Okay, so we'll have to end the program now. So thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bodhi.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you,
Bhante.
Namo Buddhaya, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, dear Bhante.
Okay.
So happy to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.